David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Adrian Belew, and I've had some requests to feature some of Adrian's music, and this is the first time I've featured him here on the Late Night Lessons channel, so I'm very excited about that. Definitely a legendary, avant-garde, experimental, guitar legend. And, his career started somewhere around 1977. He's worked with a whole bunch of different, groups and musicians and artists over the years. And I've definitely been a big fan of his music and his output, simply because he's so forward-thinking and abstract and weird with the guitar, with effects and chords and dissonance and all these strange sounds. Sometimes it sounds like whale song, sometimes it sounds like a horror movie, sometimes it's just weird, erratic, modulation and delay effects and stuff. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, but definitely if you're an Adrian Belew fan or a fan of experimental guitar, this lesson's totally for you. So as I mentioned, Adrian's career started around 1977, and during his career as a solo artist, he's released 27 solo albums, 5 live albums, not to mention appearing on 5 Frank Zappa records, 2 David Bowie albums, 5 Talking Heads albums, 10 King Crimson albums, 4 albums from his project The Bears, also 4 albums with 9 Inch Nails, and a whole bunch of other people. But here's an image with some of the people Adrian's worked with in his career. So I actually met Adrian back in 2018 at Sweetwater, and that was during their Gear Fest, celebration that summer. And I was there covering the event for Guitar Player magazine, and I got to meet Adrian Belew, and I was floored. I was like, oh my gosh, shook his hand, took a few photos, talked to him for a minute. And, I do remember vividly watching him while he performed, and he had his band with him, and they sounded great. But I was watching them taking photos, trying to kind of take notes of what they were doing, for the article I was putting together for Guitar Player. And I remember at one point he had this, I don't know what song he was playing. I have no idea what he did. He just had this swirly modulation delay thing going on, and it kept oscillating, and it kept, I don't know, I've never heard or seen anybody play guitar and it sounded like that. It was like you were standing in the middle of a hurricane or a tornado or something, and it was just swirling around, and then suddenly it stopped. And I remember looking at him, and he moved on to the next part of the song or whatever. And I was just so confused. I was like, what in the hell was that? So if you're like me and a prog rock fan, I'm definitely very excited to kind of check out this Beat tour that Steve Vai, Tony Levin, Danny Carey, and Adrian Belew are putting together, like a tribute to King Crimson. And they're going to kind of hit a lot of 80s King Crimson, for that tour. I've been watching some of the posts that Steve Vai, and Adrian have kind of posted online, and it's very interesting. I can't wait for that tour to actually begin. The chord-based and rhythm guitar examples in this episode came from 4 Adrian Belew-related albums, and that includes his solo output and also music from his project The Bears. And I was tempted to dive into, Zappa and King Crimson and Bowie and Talking Heads and some of this stuff, but I decided just to focus on him and his solo output and also the Bears album too. So anyway, here we go. With the opening, that's Naïve Guitar from Adrian's album Lone Rhino, and as you could hear, he's basically doing volume swells with these stretchy, sus2 voicings. And it actually starts with that B sus2, and you're just kind of spelling out the chord with volume swells. So pick the note and then swell your volume on like that. And I'm just spelling those notes out, B, F sharp, and that C sharp, right? But with volume swells. So pick, swell, pick, swell, pick, swell. And then do a similar thing in A, like A sus2, and you're going to move that B note back to A. Like that. So it's B sus2 here, and then A sus2 to that A5. Or it's implied, because you're just swelling into those notes. And start it again with that B sus2. And then you basically just hit an A5 and swell that to an E5. And then a little part of E major right there. So you're swelling chords. And then start it again with that B sus2. And then right here you're going to do the A sus2 and you're going to bend that B note. And then end on that A note. Go back to B sus2. And then here it's A5, E major to E5 like that. And you're kind of getting that, you know, that B note, that fretted B in there. Like that. And I'm a big fan of volume swells like that, especially with chords. You know, think of Cathedral from Van Halen, of course. And here's another example of those sus2 chords, you know, with that volume swell action. Really cool stuff. The next example is also from Naïve Guitar. It's kind of the next section of the song, and it's this descending, kind of moving chord pattern like this. Adrian excels at these dreamy chord sequences and progressions like that. So it starts here, and that's like an implied D major 7 right there. The open D and those two fretted notes, that C sharp and that F sharp. And then change that C sharp to C. Now it's D7 implied. And then that C is going to move back to a B. Now it's a D6. So you're hearing that moving note within the chord. Like that, and you're just kind of going down and then bringing it back up. And that last time you're going to move from C to C sharp a little faster. And then right there the chord changes to this. And that's an A major 9 right there. Like that. And that's a really cool, you know, chord progression there. Next up's the song Ballet for a Blue Whale. This came from Adrian's album Twang Bar King, and this is really interesting. Spacey, stretchy chords. Something like that. It's really cool, real spacey and dreamy, and it starts with this B sus4 add 9, like that. So think of like a B sus4 chord, then you're also adding the 9th, that C sharp up there. And there's whale song like during this part, Ballet for a Blue Whale. But there's whale song and it's real spaced out. I'm probably playing that way too fast because it's really slow. And then there's a big pause and some whale noises, and then you do it again. And then you pick through it a little bit differently. And then you're going to start sliding part of it. Like that. And then you're moving to this D add 9, like that, with the high E open. And then grab a harmonic there on the 7th fret on the D, right there. And then it's A major 7 like this. And then you're going to basically hear this G sharp bent a half step back and forth. Like that. And then it changes to E minor right here. So really interesting. One more time here. Next up's the song Superboy. This is from the Bears' first album, and we're still using these stretchy sus2 chords, like this. You know, something like that, and we're starting with this B flat sus2 way down here. Kind of pick through it like that 3 times in a row, and then you're going to basically change this B flat root note to an A, and that's going to change that to an A minor flat 6 implied, like that. But you're picking through it, you know? You can go back to that B flat sus2, and then you're going to do a quick change, you know, that A minor flat 6 to B flat sus2. And then right there, you're going to move up to a D flat sus2 right there. And then change that D flat to a C, and then that's a C minor flat 6 implied. And what a stretchy chord right there, because you got to go an extra fret lower. So definitely, Adrian's not afraid of these stretchy chords and really getting his hand kind of fanned out to grab some of those voicings. Really cool stuff. Next up's a section from the song None of the Above from that Bears' first album, and this is really interesting, like this. Something like that goes back to the beginning right there. So it starts with this kind of poppy, you know, B major to A major pick through like this. Then you're grabbing this D sharp and bending that a half step back and forth into E, like a half step bend. And then pick through that B to A again. Do that weird bend on the D sharp. Do it again. It's kind of a different, almost flamenco. Kind of melody right there. Go back into that B to A. Do that weird bend again. And then I'm hybrid picking this part, but you can hear it's basically like a C flat 5, like that. But he's separating, you know, this double stop from the 2 fretted notes there on the G and the D, like that. It almost sounds like a horror movie or like Psycho or something. Or like Twilight Zone. Move that down to a B flat, flat 5, and do it again right there. Go back to C flat 5. Then he eventually moves up to D flat 5 right there. And eventually it goes back to that B, A, and that weird bend. But that's definitely kind of a signature move in Adrian's chord world. These weird, you know, tonalities, you know, some hybrid picking, weird effects, and the way he's kind of putting his guitar parts together. Very different, you know, very outside the box, and definitely nothing like the norm. There's nothing normal about Adrian Belew, but that's what makes him so great. All right, last but not least is the song Beautiful. This came from Adrian's album Op Zop Tuwa, and this is really dreamy and atmospheric. I love guitar parts like this. It sounds like the soundtrack to a dream you're having. Like this. Something like that. So it starts, you know, this really cool chord progression, all atmospheric and kind of eerie. And it starts with this D add 9, like that. Think of like a cowboy C major chord, but move it up 2 frets. Don't play the open G, and just pick through it like this. So the A, D, and then the high E and B. And that's going to change to this. And that's an implied F sharp minor add 11 right there. Just that little string chord, 3-note chord. So it's an implied, F sharp minor add 11. And then that F sharp's going to change to F, and now it's an F add sharp 11. Like that. And you're just changing that one note. And then keep that and add the C sharp, and that's going to change it to a C sharp 7 flat 13. Like that. So the first cycle of chords, you've got this, that D add 9, that F sharp minor add 11, F add sharp 11, and then the C sharp 7 or C sharp 7 flat 13. So that's the first pass. And I'm probably going a little too fast. It's real slow and kind of like this fragile little guitar part, but it's so cool. Start again on that D add 9, the F sharp minor add 11, the F add sharp 11, and now add an A, like an open A string right there to that chord, and you're doing like that. That's an implied, A sus2 flat 6, like that. Because you're doing like that. Really cool chords, and like I said, I love guitar parts like that. It's not hard to play, but it definitely puts you in this different world or this kind of atmospheric universe. Really cool. All right, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the chords of Adrian Belew. Definitely a very interesting guitarist, very inspiring player, outside the box with everything he does. And if you find yourself kind of locked into typical, guitar moves or guitar tones, guitar effects, check out somebody like Adrian. He'll blow your world wide open, because not only are his, chord approaches and his lead guitar, antics and stuff like that very interesting and different. It's his tones and effects, and we didn't really dive into that in this episode. I did mention I was going to talk about this, at the beginning, but that's one area of Adrian's, playing and his style that's really hard to mimic and imitate, are the sounds he gets out of the guitar. Experimental sounds, maybe using a slide with weird fuzzes and delays and stuff, ebows and all kinds of weird stuff, sustainer, effects and stuff. And depending on what kind of rig you have, what pedals you have, you may not be able to copy his sounds. And I did see some posts from him where he's preparing for the Beat Tour, and he's trying to come up with some of those pedals and those sounds that he used, back in the 80s. And he was trying to find, I think, electroharmonic stuff and some original, pedals that he used to get that exact sound. So that's really hard to do when you find somebody like this that has all these bells and whistles. And if you don't have those bells and whistles, it's really hard to approach their music. But with Adrian, he does have stuff that doesn't have quite so many bells and whistles, which is what I hit in this episode. So anyway, definitely a great player, but know that before you dive into his music and his world. He has a lot of very unique and very distinct sounds and tones and effects that he uses, which is really inspiring. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Layout Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.